it's always a good day.
That is true.
A very good friend of mine. Every time I talk to him, I ask him, Mike, how you doing today? He always has the same answer. Best day of my life.
What do they say? Any day above ground is a good day.
Although yesterday I was below grade in a house that was so below grade. No, okay. All right. Hey, listen. So you and I were chatting the other day. So it's the first week of May. So May's numbers for sales and all of that have been April's numbers have been really, I'd say at this point now we can say they're closed because most closings by this point in time will have been updated in the system. So I think the numbers for April are there. And then on Wednesday, the Fed had its meeting, and that was something you were watching for, what's going on with rate adjustments from the Fed, and then how does that apply outward, as well as I think you were looking at the, their notes on the balance sheet and what that's doing, and what does all that mean to, a buyer consumer or even a seller maybe.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it has implications for even people who aren't buying and selling, because if anyone was watching, I put out an email on the 1st, and I said right around 3 p.m. on Wednesday, keep your eye on the stock market. And sure enough, took off. Now it dropped just as fast the next day. And there's some reasons
that was overheated buying.
It was. Yeah, that was emotional driven, or driven by emotion. But there was also some underlying things that go into that. So what the Fed decided on Wednesday, so they have a 2-day meeting, Tuesday and Wednesday. On Wednesday at 2, they release their minutes. It's a short couple paragraphs that get picked apart like crazy. And then the bigger thing is the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, has a press conference right around 2:30. They raised their base rate by 0.5%, which was very much expected, very much priced in, so to say. It wasn't a shock. The big thing that he said in the Q&A that did shock people was that the 0.75% rate hikes were completely off the table. So leading up to this, there was a lot of speculation that it was going to be a 0.5% this week, and then next month and the month following, maybe 0.75% price hikes or interest rate hikes. I mean, there was some pretty serious, and there still is some pretty serious speculation. But at this point, he said, no way. He said, that's not a serious discussion. It's not on the table. So the market took that and ran with it. And then the market digested it a little bit the next day and said, you know what, that's not that big of a deal. So nothing really surprising in regards to the Fed's rate. Now, it's important to understand that the Federal Reserve raising their rate, which is the federal funds rate, by 0.5% does not mean that mortgage interest rates are immediately 0.5% higher. That's very important to understand, because as I said, the market was expecting this. So you saw mortgage rates kind of going like this in anticipation of the Federal Reserve raising their interest rate. So what we saw in mortgage interest rates has been about the same. They actually might have gone up a little bit, along with the 10-year Treasury yield. And some of that is because of this. There was just as much talk from the chairman, Jerome Powell, during the Q&A of things being, under control and they have a steady path. Then there's just as much talk of, looking at employment and looking at persistent inflation, and they're worried about inflation becoming entrenched. So for all the, the good that came out of that 2-day meeting and saying, yes, we're on the path that we've laid out and there's no surprises, and there weren't really any surprises. Right. There's the economic reality of where we're at, which is an extremely hot, tight labor market. There are now about 2 open positions for every unemployed person in the United States. That means that wages are going to keep going up. Wages increasing can lead to higher inflation. We have a war going on. The war is affecting inflation. There's COVID cases still going higher and higher in China, which they're a major supplier, can lead to more inflation. So there's a lot of things that are still out there that still need to be dealt with, that still are going to affect the path of the economy going forward. And so even though the Federal Reserve did exactly what they said they were going to do, there's still a lot of uncertainty about the future in the economy, and that is going to cause interest rates to continue to inch up until we get some concrete ceiling that says, hey, employment is starting to turn, meaning maybe wages are now starting to go down. When wages go down, inflation can go down. When oil prices start to go down, inflation can go down. When supply goes up, inflation can go down. What the Fed is trying to do, though, is work on the demand side of that, which is their federal funds rate goes into the rate that banks offer on credit cards and auto loans and other types of loans that people get. And so if they can make it so that people are less and less willing to get those loans, they can bring demand down, which should bring inflation down. So there's all these layers. I know I just talked for like 5 minutes straight, but there's a lot of layers that are going into these interest rates right now, not to mention some of the things that investors are worried about, because all this goes back to investors. Investors are looking for a certain amount of return on their investment. So if they buy a collection of mortgages and inflation is 7% and the mortgages are priced at 5%, then they're actually taking a loss there. But also, if we know that inflation is going to come down in the future and mortgage interest rates are going to go down, all those loans that were closed at 5% are going to refinance. And then those loans that these investors were planning on getting interest from for several years, now they're only going to get 12 months of interest. So it's a tough environment to figure out which way mortgage interest rates are going. But I'd say for the time being, expect them to still inch up a little bit. I think that they're still going to go higher.
So that was incredibly helpful. And I appreciate, because you covered a lot there, but I think that was really helpful. Here's one thing that I'm kind of taking away, though, from what you were saying and all of that, as it pertains specifically to the housing market, because as it pertains to general inflationary concerns and things like that, that's, as you point out, there's so many things that go into that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no one singular item that affects inflation, all those things together. And the Ukraine thing is not something to be dismissive of, because it does have economic impacts. It has impacts on food and everything else. But one of the takeaways I got from what you just said was you used the word inching a few times, which to me you're trying to say, but you can't specifically, state or prove or guarantee or anything like that. Is that we should anticipate a little bit of stability in the mortgage rate area, so that, inching to me is not 2 months ago when you and I talked, it was we're going to see bounce.
Yep.
I think you used words like spike and, hyper increase or hyper whatever. But the point is, you use the word inch a few times. So to me, what that conveys to all the people out there who are either buying or selling houses right now, because it does affect sellers as well.
Yeah.
The reason why is because it can put some confidence that in the market, there's going to be buyers coming back into it who have been sitting on the sidelines. And for buyers, what it means is that you can take a little bit more confidence that when you're looking at a home today and you're planning that mortgage rate, when they have a conversation with their lender, such as yourself, that you're going to be able to say, look, yeah, we are seeing some movement in it, but we're not crazy concerned like we were 3 months ago when there was no plan. The Fed is now communicating its plan, which we can all look at and say, whether it's good or bad, whether we like it or not, is irrelevant. The plan is being communicated. The plan is being followed. It's going to give investors out there an ability to be a little bit more confident about how they price things into the market. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see a drop in oil tomorrow, which is going to obviously then not change gas prices. But a lot of economists think that we're still looking at more, maybe by fall we peak out at inflation. Maybe it's early summer. Who knows? I think that's all theoretical, because they're just, like you said, there's so many compounding points. The one thing, though, I think we can point to, and it does tie into the housing conversation, which we'll shift over a little bit in a second here to the April numbers, because it all relates. But I do think that the one thing that we can point to that is not on the short term, and that's supply chain.
Yes.
What we're not seeing, you cannot dismiss the fact that China is a major supplier to the world. You just can't dismiss that. And so their inability to be able to produce and pack those goods and put them on ships and let those ships go, the number of ships leaving China has shrunk. I watched an analyst the other day talking about that. So the point is that supplies in general are going to continue to be constrained. Now, if demand comes down, then supplies can soften a little bit, as we know, but there still just isn't enough supply in general, even if demand comes down by X percent. You know, you look at just basic raw material, you have that problem, whether it's for food or for housing or whatever. Well, now you talk housing supply. Okay. And what we're seeing is that we're just not seeing the usual seasonal pop of inventory come on the market. And that's because we have reluctance on both sides of the fence. You have sellers who are reluctant because where am I going to go? What's for sale for me? What am I going to buy? When I sell, yeah, it's a great seller's market. Where am I going? And for buyers, they're looking on and going, okay, yeah, more stuff is coming on the market. It got a little bit better, but we're still just not seeing a ton of stuff. And oh man, it's still as competitive as it was before. And here's the thing. So I'm going to share my screen here because I want to go through a couple of stats. And I think what we're going to do, Bill, if you're okay with this, and we're going to do this a little bit more interactive, but if you're okay with this, I'm going to pull in what the entire MLS is. So Connecticut's entire MLS, though, does account for certain parts of New York and Massachusetts because they share border points, like Springfield, for example, or you know, Westchester County. Those sales, because those houses can get brought in because of the fact that you have agents that can work reciprocity in both markets. So that does come into the quote unquote entire MLS view. So we'll look at that, but it's not wildly off. And we're going to drill into one city in particular here in Connecticut because it's kind of a central town. That's Southington. All right.
Yeah.
I think you would suggest, you know, Southington's a good mix of single family, multifamily, condos, apartments, you know, anything. It has a lot of it. The only thing I don't think it has really much of are co-ops. That's more along the shoreline.
Yeah.
So, but it's going to have your traditional sales. It's going to have foreclosure sales even, you know, and the MLS view does account for foreclosure sales as well. So we'll break that into it, but I'm going to just share this here for a second. All right, bear with me. So one of the things that we look at, let's see here. All right. So what we're looking at right here, this is sale price. Okay, so this is median sale price. I like to use median. It's a little bit more accurate in my opinion. But anyway, this particular view is a 1 year period. Okay, so this goes back to January of 2021 up till now, and it's on a rolling 3-month view. The blue line is Southington. The red line is the entire MLS. And as we said a minute ago, that accounts for a little bit more. What's important about this is following. So this is consistent. This is what we saw all last year. Those prices just kept going up. Okay. And we hit a median price value in the summer of last year in the mid 334 on average. Okay. Southington was a little bit higher. And then our seasonal adjustments came, you know, going into the fall, going into the winter, that all happened. We saw that bump as we did. And February was a little bit higher than it normally is for Southington, but the red line being the entire MLS followed the usual path. March, we saw that drawback. Now, if you recall in March, the reason why we saw that drawback was because that was when you and I first started talking. That's when we saw the speculation about rates really hit. At the end of the day, the sales that you see there, so those sales in March reflect contracts that were written in January.
Yeah.
Because what would you say the average is? 6 to 8 weeks for a closing? That's what I use.
Yeah. I think, I mean, obviously they can go quicker, but you pad that to make sure that you have the time and it's not a stressful thing the whole way.
6 weeks is a healthy. 8 weeks is, you know, you've had a couple of delays on things.
Yep.
So if you look at that and say that March sales reflect contracts written in January. Well, in January, what did we have? We had rate fears.
Yep.
Right. So you had everybody freaking out. Well, then in February, the Fed started talking about how it's going to make its changes. It's going to move ahead with a plan. Now look at our April numbers. They skyrocketed because that was where buyers started getting confidence about what's going to happen. And we also saw a little bit of bump in inventory. Oop, wait, that's a lie. Let me flip over here. So this is the number of homes for sale. Okay. This green line down here, this is Southington.
Oh, I don't even see.
Oh, hang on. Let me flip it over. Sorry.
Pop that over.
So, yeah, the home for sale, the number of homes for sale. You got it now? So the green line represents Southington. Now, again, entire MLS, there's 6,600 homes for sale. In Southington, currently, there's 64 homes for sale. Now, that's what's active. Okay, that does not mean anything that recently went under contract. That's compared to the prior month, there's a handful more. But this is what we're seeing. I mean, there is just barely movement, and you had more inventory going into the period last year. There's summer. So we're hoping that we're going to see some of that again this year. Because if I go back to April of last year, there was more inventory in the market in April last year, 111 houses last year. This year, 64.
Oh, I mean, that's almost double.
So, and I'm going to get to a point here in a second. Let me change to a different view. Okay. And this is, by the way, this is all property types. Actually, let's do this for real quick. Let's just take single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Let's say it's 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, and it's a traditional sale. There are 5. All right.
Southington is a big town. For anyone who doesn't know, Southington is a pretty big town. So the fact that there are 5 is a little crazy.
Not encouraging. But now let's go to this next view, okay? Because this next one is going to be the days on market view. And this is where it's going to get a little bit more interesting, because this is when I talk to people all the time and I say, this is why you've got to pay attention to what's going on. And I'm going to tie this back to your conversation about rate in a second. So days on market, on average right now, across all types, we'll break it down to single family in a second. Southington is about, I would say that is absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. And the days on market calculation, just to explain real quick, Bill, because it's a gray metric, because what marks a house as being on market is the time from when it was listed to when it goes to what's called the under contract status. If you look at a house that's under contract but continue to show, it is still an active property. It is still available for potential buyers to view. Doesn't mean the seller is going to accept a backup offer or anything, but it's still available for potential buyers. Once a contract has passed its appraisal, then, and we know that the house is appraised, or we've agreed to whatever difference in appraisal there is with the seller, then we flip the status on that property to under contract. So this 8 here is a little misleading, because it suggests that we're getting into, a lot of houses going straight under appraisal, and that's really not the case. But it is an indicator of the speed at which houses are going to contract in one form or another. Okay. Now let's just take it in that single family view that we talked about. And I'm not even getting into price. I'm just taking type of home. So here you see it's at about 10 days, and the entire analysis is about 17. It's not much different. Yeah. Okay. So if we start to nuance this with different types of homes and everything, it'll get a little bit more different. All right. Now this is a view that I think is real important. And now I'm going to get to rate and bring it back to you. Yeah, let's do this one. This is a view that's very important, because this is where people have got to really be paying attention to what they're buying and what they're looking for. Percent of lists sold. Okay. So what we're seeing here is that we are, on average, we are still over list price, and it has never gone down under list price as a median. Okay. So if you're looking at a house in Southington, you should be prepared to be spending at least 102% of list price, which means if you're buying a house for $300,000, at minimum, it's selling $306,000. Yeah. Why is it so important tying it back to rate? Okay. Because for buyers in this market, this is not a market to, what's the saying that you and I were talking about the other day? You don't, what did you say?
Don't try to time in the market beats timing the market.
Right. So right now, trying to time this market with either, hey, George, I think that we're going to see a reduction in price. Hey, George, I think we're going to see a pop in inventory. Hey, George, I think mortgage rates are going to settle down. Well, all 3 of those are contradicted.
Yeah.
Okay. So days on market tells us that there is no slowdown of buyer appetite to go out there, find a home, put it under contract. That's what days on market tells us. Percent of list price going above tells us that there's no loss of appetite to pay for the house for what it's listed for. So going out there thinking, I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to offer less, is not a strategy that you're going to win with in this market, because there's no evidence to suggest that a below list price is going to work, except for the rare occasion. And then the fact that we're looking at prices in general just continue to move up means, listen, we're not seeing that retraction. And if we're going to see a retraction in price, maybe it's seasonal when we get into fall. But so if interest rates, as you said, are inching, right, then you have to take a little bit more confidence as a buyer that, okay, this is pretty much what it's going to continue to be. And there is simply nothing in those numbers year to date, compared it to even last year, there's nothing to suggest that we should see something going backwards anytime soon. Is it going to go backwards? Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to say, yeah, probably. We don't know, because there's just, go back to the supply conversation. There's just not enough for sale that meets the demand of the buyers. Now, can demand come down if the Fed really pushes on rates? Yeah, I think all it's going to do, though, and this is a point you made the other day, I think all it's going to do is knock out a pool of buyers. I don't think it's necessarily going to reduce the number of buyers that are well, it'll reduce the number of buyers if you knock out a pool, but I don't think it's necessarily going to slow down people's appetite to purchase. It's just going to either reduce people from one purchasing level to another and put them into an even more competitive arena, or it may just put some people on the bench who say, I'm just going to have to wait. Yeah. But those are individuals who either A, have to be prepared to pay more in their rent if their lease is coming due, be prepared that if they need a place to rent, it's going to take longer to find one, or I don't know what the third option would be right now.
Yeah, well, that's just the thing. You and I have talked a couple times. Yes, rates are higher than they were, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. That is 100% true. As is rent. The thing that is good about, the mortgage, at least, is the stability and the security that stability can bring. I think we both have fielded some calls recently where somebody's saying, I have to get out, or my landlord is saying, my rent is going up $300 a month. Now, that doesn't mean that you should rush out and make a poor housing decision. I don't think either of us would ever say that is the plan. But, rising rates and rising prices is part of that. You can't time the market, and timing the market is better than trying to time the market, because having time in the market allows you to, enjoy some of that appreciation. So I vividly remember 2020, when prices were really starting to go up. I had a couple of people who just said, I'll wait till next year. It's just these prices are too much. And then, I'll wait till next year, this year, because these prices are just too much. And what you would have had if you had purchased back in 2020 was probably 15% appreciation.
There you go. Here's 2020. So if you go back to January of 2020, 246,000 was for the MLS was the median. Today you're at 315.
Yeah. So that's, when you look at housing from a standpoint as an asset class, all asset classes are the same in the sense that when you're near the peak, everyone says, I'll never pay. I mean, people, how many times has the S&P or the NASDAQ or Amazon or Google or Apple gotten to a price where people go, no way is everyone going to buy this stock at 800? Amazon's now at 2,800. It's the same thing for housing. Now, that's not to say that there aren't down periods. Right now in the stock market, it's a pretty good route going on. I'd say from all-time highs of 6 months ago, we're probably down 15% or so.
Yeah.
And it'll go back up eventually.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you for a second, though, because you're hitting on an important point. But before you go much further, here's something to keep in mind. I remember, because I'm a lot older than you, I remember when we were talking about the Dow and the stock market and everything in the teens.
Yeah.
Okay, when it was when it hit 15,000, everybody thought that was just unbelievable. They couldn't believe it. I remember that. And let me tell you something. My father and I used to sit there and say, yeah, that doesn't mean we've peaked forever.
Yeah, no.
It means that we hit a moment. And that's, I think, the way we have to try and help people understand housing right now. This is not forever, meaning it is not going to continually go like this.
No, no.
Mm-mm. But it will do this, and then it will do this. But if you look at the history of housing in general, if you just look at the history of it over the last 20 years, we have never gone so far backwards as to where we dipped below prior years for a substantive period. Yep. Meaning, even in the 2008, when the debacle came and the housing market just blew up, the home value price in the following year in 2009, while we were in a recession, was still $30,000 higher than it had been 6 years earlier.
Yep.
it never went below those previous periods. And so what we're saying is for buyers, you've got to have a mindset that, and this is important because you and I both coach people on this. You never make cavalier decisions with your finances in terms of buying a house. I will say that the number of houses we're seeing come back on market within the first 7 days, some of that ties to inspection. A lot of that's coming up as cold feet because buyers are feeling like, wait a minute, am I really ready to pay this much over list price? Because we have buyers going in and offering $30,000 and $40,000. I just wrote an offer, I think 2 weeks ago, for about $60,000 over list price. We didn't get it. I think, no, that's not because somebody wrote a higher offer. It's because somebody wrote a lower offer, but still above list, but it was cash. So that wiped it out. But the point is, you have people writing these really high offers, and then they turn around going, "Oh man, do I really want to spend $30,000 more on this house than they're asking for it?" And so you have this cold feet thing that's coming up. So what I would encourage, the people that you and I both work with, but I would encourage just buyers in general, have a plan. Know what you are comfortable with financially. Look at the calendar. What is your time frame? Because if you're in a situation like some people are, and we've worked with some individuals who've been stuck in a situation where they've got to get out, or their rent is going up to a rate that just doesn't make any sense for them to do. And so they have a more interim mindset for purchase. Maybe they're paying a little bit above that list price. There's an example you and I use. They actually were 3% over list price. And that's where they were. House appraised for, I think, 4.5% over list price. So it was not an issue for them. But they've bought that because they know that in the next, I'll say 5 years, they expect to move on from that house. Well, they'll have equity in the home. They'll either leverage that equity to a new purchase and through a sale, or they'll do something else with it. But you have a lot of people right now who are saying, well, I'm just going to wait and see. And if you're in the mode, if you have the ability to wait and see because your rent is month to month, you're not getting an increase in rent. If you're renting, if you're selling a home and you don't have a Hubbard clause on it, meaning you don't need the proceeds of the sale to make the purchase, then this market's very favorable to you to be able to take the time to find the right house and stick to your financial plan. The people it's hurting are the ones who don't have that flexibility. Or self-imposed lack of flexibility.
And I think that that's probably true. Again, if you're looking at any asset class across any time period, if you have the ability to decide when you're going to purchase and, at what level, that you usually are better off.
All right. So 2 questions for you. Number 1, what's today's rate right now?
Oh, geez, George.
So let's
say your best example, your prime borrower is probably going to be around like a 5.5 still, maybe a little higher. Because again, I think that they went a little higher after the Feds. We might have new rate sheets already today. And that's actually, your FHA isn't going to be too far behind that, at this point. FHA is a little funky right now in some of what we're seeing in rates. And I think some of that ties into the fact that everyone wants to refinance out of FHA, usually into conventional after a set period of time, because there's, you want to get rid of the mortgage insurance. So I think that some of that is playing into the rates because, again, the investors are looking at it and saying, okay, the market's appreciating, meaning that somebody might buy the home at a 3.5% equity position, and then the market's going to appreciate. And without them doing anything, their home is now going to be worth 10 or 15. Their equity is going to be 10 or 15, maybe even 20% in 2 years. Who knows where the rates are going to go? Maybe they'll qualify. They're going to refinance into conventional anyway. So it's a funky time. It's very much a funky time in the rate market. There's plenty of days where we should be seeing better rates and we don't. Days where we should not be seeing better rates and we do. It's funky right now.
It is. So I got a second question for you. Okay, along the same lines. If you were going to guess at a rate forecast over the next 3 months in terms of percent of movement, if you were going to say this, what you guys in your office talk about, or what you just feel, and of course, this is not anything that you're promising.
Oh,
in any way, shape, or form. But if you were going to say, I think that we're going to see rates move, along this kind of a horizon, what would it be?
I wouldn't be surprised by a 0.5 percentage point, meaning that we start to get close to that 6%. I think that there's going to be a mental aspect to that 6% range, meaning, again, investors, even though that'll probably be an appropriate yield relative to where inflation is going to be, I still think there's going to be that mental aspect of, breaking over 6%. I'm assuming that we're going to stick right around there. I don't know. It could go in the other direction. But I don't think it's going to be big movements. I don't think, something major could change. But again, Fed is being pretty good right now. I mean, they were very, very, stern over the coming months up to this, and that was scaring everybody. But at this point, the, sternness has turned into, well, no, I told you what I was going to do, and I told you the rules and the consequences, and now you have to play within them. And the market's just kind of going, okay, all right, fine, fair enough. That's true.
Well, I think what the market prefers is removing uncertainty.
100%. Yeah.
So,
yep.
All right. You gave an example a second ago about the rate of increase on equity, and you said, who knows, in 2 years it could be worth 20%. I thought to myself, boy, that sounds high. But here's an example. While you were talking, I just went and looked at this real quick. So if we take the January 2020 median sale price, call it 245, and the January median, or the current median sale price of, call it 330, it's a 25% increase.
Yeah. So somebody got that FHA loan 2.5 years ago.
You have 28% equity in your house today.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, listen, that could stay flat now for 2 years, 3 years. That could go down, 2% for a year and then come back up. That's certainly not to say that 2 years from now, it's going to be another 20. That thinking is kind of what led into our whole, along with a horrible industry practices, but that led into that 2008 crash. It's kind of people were saying, well, listen, you just buy this house, say you make whatever, and it'll be worth double in 3 years and you can sell it. That's not real estate today. Those days are done.
No.
But listen, wages have gone up. People are leaving jobs. I mean, the quits rate was like 3%. The jobs report came out, a couple jobs figures came out during the week. But there's still all these open positions. Wages are going up. You have to understand that that's all tied together. This is all part of inflation. Your wage going up is inflation. So if you have, if you're looking at a raise and you're saying, yeah, this is all good, that is good, but that's also going to bring with it everything else. So
everything's relative.
Yeah, it brings everything. And that is a sign of a good growing economy, which is what we want to have. Is our production is going to grow. The amount of, wages for each individual is going to grow, as is prices for things. Your car will get more expensive. Your home will get more expensive. That is part of it. Yeah. It's just part of it, though. You can't have one without the other. We're unfortunately unable to pick and choose. I only want my wages to go up, but I want the price of everything to go down. It doesn't work that way.
No. We got to notice that our lease is up on our company vehicle, and
have fun.
So I'm looking, I'm going, oh my God, we are just going to get slaughtered. So we may just buy the thing out, because trying to do something new, just the prices of vehicles is just too much. Yeah. But hey, listen, if there's one thing you and I both love to do, it's talk economics and housing, and I'm sure we could do this for 2 more hours. Yeah. Because as you said, a few things, there were things in that I wanted to dive into, but we'll
wow. All right, George, hold him back.
Yeah, you know me. I can get on my soapbox for a while, but I think the takeaway from this whole conversation, the takeaway is this: if you are buying or selling in this market, it's not that it's going to continue to be at the frenzy that it was, but the continuance is going to be there of strength in price, lack of inventory. Mortgage rates probably, as you put it, inching up a bit more, but maybe we're going to see some stability in that in the coming months. Yeah. But overall, if you're selling, take confidence that this is a market you can sell in and still get a strong value from it, because buyers are out there seeking homes that they need, but they're not going to overpay for things that are crap. Yeah. That we know.
Yep.
And if you're buying and you decide I need to put myself on the sidelines, then I would say put yourself on the sidelines for a while. Because if you're really going to try and say, I'm going to wait and see could be 9, 12 months out before it makes sense for you. But at the same time, like we've told others, you look at some of those examples, those who said, well, I'll wait till all the prices come down. This is not a price come down thing. There's just no historical evidence of the fact that prices are going to go so far backwards that you're going to say, oh, well, now I'm buying like it was 2017 again.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
It's unrealistic. So, you use the 2020 to 2022, it was 245 to 330. Does anybody out there right now realistically think that the homes that you're looking at today for 330 are going to go back and you'll be able to get it for 245? I would say that that's probably not true. So if in your head you're going, well, 330 is a little much, but this is more like a 310, 300 house. Yeah. Maybe you'll be right. But to go all the way back to 245, that seems unrealistic,
Again, pointing to the charts, we can look at it. The movement, the negative movement, while we've seen a lot of upward movement, the negative movement is not as dramatic. Yeah. The negative movement does come in, but it's usually seasonal. And as long as inventory continues to be as depressed as it is, you're going to have sellers being able to continue to push price, But fundamentally, like you and I said the other day, and I'll stop it after this. Fundamentally, like we said the other day, buyers ultimately set price.
Yep.
What buyers are willing to spend. So if buyers stop buying, sale prices will come down.
Yep.
But you don't have enough housing out there, so you're going to continue to see buyers out there buying.
Yeah.
All right. I'll stop. I promise. I'm done.
All right.
All right, man. Hey, listen, we got more Q&A that people have sent in. So we will touch on that, I think, in our next one. And then we're going to do the walkthrough on, what is the process of buying a house, because that has come up so many times. Yes. Just too many people out there saying, I don't even know how to go about doing this, because you have everybody trying to get out of rent situations. So we'll cover that. And I think we had a few other topics that we're going to go back to. But hey, listen, as always, Bill, I appreciate your time.
Good times, George. Thank you. Talk to you soon.